I had to turn away. I almost started crying. I had to turn away.
This man stepped in to help after the shooting of a 7-year-old in Hamilton. The child was shot in his own home. Police say he's in stable condition. Nally Nanowski is live outside the house where it happened. And Nally, police are still searching for suspects tonight.
That's just it, Dwight. We know that they're searching for at least 2 people. They say one of them, a man, went around the side of the home and then opened fire in the backyard. Detectives spent the day going door to door asking neighbors if they had seen anything or if they have surveillance footage. Danny lives a few doors down. He rushed outside after hearing gunshots and then followed the screams to his neighbor's home.
Opened her door, went in, and her son was laying on the floor at the end of the hallway. When I got to him, he had 2 gunshot wounds, one in the lower left abdomen and one in the left hand.
Danny, who doesn't want to give us his last name, tended to the 7-year-old boy's wounds.
He said he was in pain and it was hard for him to breathe, so I asked him if he wanted to sit up. He sat himself up a little bit, and I let him prop himself back against my leg. And then he looked right in my eyes and he asked me, "Am I going to die?" That was heartbreaking. I had to turn away. I couldn't say nothing. So when I turned back, he said it again, "Am I going to die?" And I told him, no, he's going to be okay.
The boy is in stable condition. At the time of the shooting, there were 3 adults inside the home. Police believe one of them was the intended target.
Certainly, some individuals that were inside of that house were known to the police service, and such as that's why I'm comfortable to say that this particular residence itself was a target.
Police say the shots came from the backyard around 8 last night.
There was police everywhere. I came out, like the whole street was flooded, and they started right away to block off the area, and they started putting up caution tape and stuff, and then we watched the ambulances take away the little boy.
These are the investigations that really strike home with you. These are the ones that you really, they're truly innocent victims. The child had nothing to do with this, and they were brought into a situation that they had no control over.
Detectives spent the day canvassing the area. This is the 3rd shooting in Hamilton since the new year.
This is not an anomaly within Hamilton. This is certainly something we're seeing as a trend and a growing concern of all policing partners throughout the whole area, from Durham to York to Toronto, into the Brampton-Peel region, as well as into Waterloo, into Niagara and Brantford. So we're not immune to that problem.
The only thing, Dwight, we know so far about the suspects is police say that there is at least 2 of them and that they fled in a light-colored sedan.
Thank you, Natalie. The family of Sammy Yatim is speaking out after the former Toronto police officer who shot and killed Yatim on a TTC streetcar was granted full parole. Greg Ross joins us live now with more on this. And Greg, the family spoke just about an hour ago, and they say they were surprised by the news.
That's right, Dwight. In fact, Yatim's sister, who spoke to the media for the first time today, says that she is furious by this decision. This is a family that says they are looking for closure after Sammy Yatim was shot and killed by a police officer. It happened back in the summer of 2013 when police were called after Sammy Yatim, who was 18 years old at the time, pulled a knife on a streetcar. After a lengthy standoff with police, James Fursillo fired a total of 9 shots into that streetcar at Yatim, killing him. Fursillo was later charged with second-degree murder. In 2016, he was found not guilty on those charges, instead convicted of attempted murder, and was sentenced to 6 years in prison. In April of last year, Fursillo was granted day parole after serving just 21 months of that 6-year sentence. Last week, he was granted full parole. Yatim's mother and sister say it's bad enough that Fursillo has been set free, but to make matters worse for this family, they say that they were not given an opportunity to go to either of those parole hearings to fight it.
Losing Sammy, my son, was the hardest thing I've had to deal with, which cost me my daughter too, who is not the same anymore, and all the pain and suffering that we have to live with for the rest of our lives. However, granting Forcello parole without notifying us of this proclaim broke us completely. This decision in our absence created a whole new kind of pain and ethically is not acceptable.
He is still out, right? He is on the streets. He can do whatever he wants. He has full parole. He has a new girlfriend. I don't have a life. How can he have a life? He's the criminal. I'm not. My brother is dead. I lost everything in my life.
Yatim's mother and sister say that they will continue to fight this. They are also demanding to get a number of answers to some questions that they have, including how was Forcello able to get a day parole after serving less than a third of that 6-year sentence? They also want to know why they weren't given advance notice about that first parole hearing back in April of last year. These are answers that they're demanding. They say they're going to continue to fight this. They say they want to see James Forcello put back behind bars, Dwight.
Thank you, Greg. Premier Doug Ford met today with Patrick Brown, the mayor of Brampton. It's their first time face-to-face since Ford replaced Brown as PC leader back in 2018. As our Queen's Park reporter Mike Crawley explains, today's meeting comes on a bitter anniversary for Brown.
So on behalf of the residents of Brampton, Premier, I just want to say thank you for this investment. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
It's a handshake that hasn't happened for 2 years between the man who almost became Premier and the one who actually did.
Do we have any new recruits here?
Premier Doug Ford in Peel Region today to announce more funding to Ontario's third largest police force.
The message to the criminals that are watching us now, we're coming for you. We're going to find you. We're going to catch you. And we're going to lock you up for a long time.
Mississauga and Brampton have been seeking help to combat gun crime and gang violence like this.
Great to be here with Mayor Brown.
Although Ford has met with plenty of mayors, he's avoided meeting Patrick Brown until today, exactly 2 years since this.
I reject these accusations in the strongest possible terms. It's not my values, it's not how I raised, it's not who I am.
Brown's dramatic downfall as PC leader paved the way for someone else to take his place.
The new leader of our party, Doug Ford.
Fast forward a couple of years.
In retrospect, everything happens for a reason, and I'm very happy to be where I am today.
Brown says his meeting with Ford went well.
He seemed eager to help and wanting to set a new cooperative tone.
The help Brampton wants most of all is on hallway medicine. Just 2 days ago, to try to pressure the government into action, its mayor and council declared a health emergency, calling for hundreds of new hospital beds. Ford's response today?
Yes, we will support a hospital in Brampton.
But what exactly did Ford mean by that? I asked the Premier's staff. Turns out he's just restating support for a project that's already being planned. It's an expansion of the existing Peel Memorial Hospital, kick-started by the Kathleen Wynne government. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Toronto.
The Premier was asked today about the rotating teacher strikes in the province. He says he's not currently considering back-to-work legislation. He also put the blame for the ongoing labour strife on union leadership.
We've struck so many great deals throughout the province, and it's the same union that has fought with every government, every premier for 30 years, and people see it, and they're, be frank, they're getting fed up. Not with the teachers, but the head of the unions, and I'll be very frank, a lot of teachers are fed up with the unions. When I talk to them, they said, oh, we're terrified of our unions.
Ford said the government won't budge on a 1% public sector wage cap, which is set to remain in place for the next 3 years. The comments come as public elementary teachers continue their rotating one-day strikes. The other three major teachers' unions have also been engaged in various job actions over the last several weeks. Ryerson University announced it has cut ties with the school's students' union. Ryerson released a statement saying that effective immediately, the university no longer recognizes the Ryerson Students' Union as the official student government. The university says it has lost confidence in the union's ability to represent students and to supply the services the students pay for. The move comes days after the Ryerson asked Toronto police to investigate alleged financial mismanagement by former union heads. The scandal first emerged a year ago. Ryerson's student newspaper, The Eye-Opener, reported that they found $250,000 of questionable spending on the union's credit card bill. It included purchases at a Shisha Lounge, Casino-Rama, and LCBO locations. Former RSU President Ram Ganesh was later impeached. This leaves one of Canada's largest universities without a student government. Ryerson says it will still make sure that services like health and dental benefits remain in place for students for the rest of the academic year. The rain is coming, so our city's preparing. City crews were out today clearing catch basins to help water move off the road, trying to limit the amount of possible flooding. So, Nick, how much rain are we getting?
Well, enough for a rainfall warning, Dwight. Believe it or not, it's January 24th, and here we are with rainfall in the GTA. Environment Canada, in their rainfall warning, suggesting 20 to 35 millimeters of rain, although I do think some areas could see even more than that, and it is starting right now. So here's a look at the weather radar. Now, a couple things to talk about. Right along the shoreline here, it's going to remain largely as rainfall. A little bit further to the north, and in areas that are sort of in the higher elevations, we've actually got some freezing rain risks. So that's what we're talking about over here. And then further to the east, this just in advance of the front, that's where we're looking at some more extended periods of freezing rain. But for the GTA and surrounding areas along the lake there, we're looking at in the range of about 30, even 40 millimeters of rain with this system. It's quite a large system. What's happening here is it's actually tapping into moisture from the Gulf of Mexico, and as a result, we're seeing this continuing. Now, the heaviest of the rain falling through tonight. By tomorrow morning, tapering off to some showers. We may see a quick shot of sort of wet snowfall tomorrow morning, then a few on and off showers and wet snow flurries, and then into Saturday night and Sunday, we're looking at some snowfall. Now, how much really depends on where you are. There are special weather statements in effect as well across the region. We're going to talk more about those coming up in just a little bit. For now, though, for the next 24 hours, and in particular for tonight, look for heavy rainfall to continue, especially through the overnight period, 1 degree right through until tomorrow. Your full forecast coming up in just a bit.
Thanks, Nick.
You bet.
Some striking drone images out of Wuhan, China tonight. Authorities there are rushing to build a new 1,000-bed hospital. It will be dedicated to patients infected with the coronavirus. China says the facility is set to be finished by February 3rd. It's not the first time they've had to rush building a hospital. During the SARS crisis, one medical facility was built in just 6 days. And China is reporting more victims of the coronavirus. The number of dead has now jumped to 26, with more than 800 cases. At least 30 million people in the country are now under lockdown as authorities try to contain the spread of the virus. This is a roadblock in the city of Wuhan where the outbreak is believed to have started. You can see police turning vehicles around, preventing people from leaving the city. Wuhan has a population of more than 10 million. It's normally bustling with traffic, but pictures show deserted roads. CBC Radio's As It Happens spoke last night with a resident of the city. We have agreed not to use his name.
The degree of the fear is like the biggest so far in my life. And it was the first time that I fear that the whole city, 10 million people, they have this kind of fear and this kind of anxiety. And the fact has been, I could say, a little bit distorted because at the first few weeks, we were told that it couldn't be like person-to-person transmission. But it was only 3 days ago when a very prestigious professor who was the leader of SARS took the train to Wuhan, and he told the national television that it could be person-to-person transmission. People finally realized that it's very serious, and hundreds of people has already been infected. You know, in the end, because we don't know how long this is going to last. So, yeah, I'm worried about the future.
French officials confirmed today that there are 3 cases of the coronavirus in that country, and the U.S. has reported its second confirmed case, this one in Chicago. Vicodopia now with the latest.
The patient is a Chicago area woman in her 60s in stable condition and isolated at a local hospital.
She again is clinically doing well.
Chicago health officials say the woman was in Wuhan last month. She reported no symptoms of the coronavirus at the time of her return to the U.S. on January 13th.
She started to develop some low-grade symptoms. She really had very little travel outside the home during that time period. And she called ahead and did seek care about 3 to 4 days after that.
A team from the U.S. Centers for Disease Control is on its way to Chicago to help investigate. The CDC is also looking into dozens of suspected cases in 22 states. It's a similar situation in Ontario. People reporting symptoms, so far, all have turned out negative.
We have a whole flow chart on people under investigation. We're not saying don't come forward if you have doubts. If you have doubts, ask.
Toronto is the same size as Chicago with an even greater diverse population mix. Hospitals here are anticipating they'll likely see cases of the new coronavirus.
What's happening right now is not unexpected. I think people get very nervous in the light of a lack of information or things changing so rapidly in the media and elsewhere. That is what happens when you have an emerging infectious disease.
If anything, the Chicago woman's experience demonstrates the limitations of airports screening for people infected with the coronavirus. And while the risk of infections remains low in Canada, travelers returning from China are still being encouraged to maintain good hand and respiratory hygiene. Vic Adopia, CBC News, Toronto.
In China, the outbreak has dampened spirits as people there mark the start of the Lunar New Year. It's also top of mind for the GTA's Chinese community as they get set for festivities this weekend. Lorinda Redekop explains.
This year, good health may be especially top of mind for people leaving messages on the wishing tree. Things look a little different at this New Year's marketplace.
We used to plan to have dinner in friends' home, but now maybe we will stay at home and have dinner just our own family.
Her family in Shanghai have changed their plans too.
They already bought a lot of the masks and they bought some wipes and stay at home.
This woman sees her mask as more a sign of support.
I'm so lucky because I'm in Canada right now, but I'm so worried about my family condition in Wuhan.
But many people are buying gifts and preparing like they always do, especially those who don't have family in China.
Oh, they give me this for New Year, this one. Still fresh.
A customer just brought her this New Year's present. Red envelopes are one of the most common gifts. People put money inside and it's a symbol of luck for the year ahead.
If you marry, you have to give to like other people, right? Like, if you're still single, no matter how old you are, you still collect envelope from other people.
Yeah. Okay. So if you want to make more money, you should stay single?
No one do that. No one wants to do that.
People are stocking up for a special meal with family.
Kids that are born here, they don't know much about it. They just treat it like just another day, or they're happy because they got some lucky money. That I like to keep the tradition going.
This year goes back to the first sign of the lunar calendar, the year of the rat.
People like the rat because it's the first one. It's a very, very fast and very intelligent.
Intelligent?
Yes.
New Year's celebrations are planned through the weekend, though people will be keeping an eye on progress of the coronavirus and China, where many events have been canceled. Lorinda Redekop, CBC News, Toronto.
As you heard there, one crucial part of Chinese New Year is, of course, the food.
That is 好事發財順利. It actually means money, enterprise, everything coming easily to you in the upcoming year.
A lesson in the do's and don'ts of delicious delicacies after the break.
The weather update is brought to you by Train, the most reliable heating and cooling brand. It's hard to stop a train.
The Chinese community celebrates its biggest day of the year this weekend, Lunar New Year. Food is a key part of the annual celebration, and it comes with its own traditions. Lian Yuen has your guide on what to eat and what to avoid in the name of good fortune.
It's Chinese New Year and you want to start the year off right. That means good health and lots of wealth. There are traditions everywhere, especially on the dinner table.
I'm with Lee Mann. He's a food critic and Chinese cultural guide. So Lee, we've got quite the feast on the table. Not exactly what I would have at home every year.
No, this is ambitious, absolutely.
Sure, it's over the top, but signifying overabundance is the name of the game. Start by ordering an even number of dishes because good things come in pairs.
Number 8, number 12, it actually, as long as the round number is nice, number 7 is the one to avoid.
It's like 13, unlucky. Every dish is a metaphor for something.
That is Ho Si Fat Choi Sun Lei.
Braised oysters, dried sea moss, and pig's tongue covered in gravy.
It actually means money, enterprise, everything coming easily to you in the upcoming year. So whatever you try out this year will be a success.
And those oysters look like this guy.
Yes, everything has to look like money.
Old school gold nugget. Okay, next. Every year my family always has to have a whole fish.
Yes, that's absolutely a mandatory dish. You always have a whole fish. Again, it represents togetherness and wholeness.
And there's a bonus tip when devouring it.
You take the bone out when you eat it, but you never flip it over because that represents a fishing boat flipping over.
For the pious, consider going vegetarian on New Year's Day. Try bamboo pith wrapped enoki and egg white pockets.
Even though you're vegetarian, you're pure of heart, you want money. So those little packets represent old-fashioned coin purses, and the long ones even represent what a change pack would look like in the olden days.
The Buddhist feast is commonly eaten by monks at the temple. Shiitake, dried sea moss, and golden baby corn, signifying more money, money, money. And don't shy away when this lands on the table.
We always have it beak to tail.
Absolutely. So you always have a whole chicken because it represents the whole family being together. And beak to tail means good beginnings and good endings.
Finally, the pièce de résistance, suckling pig, rubbed in spices, sauces, and hand-roasted, a sacrifice fit for the gods.
You thank Buddha, you thank the god of prosperity. If you've particularly had a good year, this is an offering to them to celebrate the
Or
passing.
to your ancestors.
Absolutely.
And don't forget dessert. This is lingo or year cake, only served this time of year. Sweet and sticky from glutinous rice flour, molded into fish because fish or yu sounds like the word for abundance.
These are some of the things you should have, but there are things that you should avoid.
Yes, so we never have squash on during the Chinese New Year because squash sounds like death, gua, and so we avoid that.
And I know my family always avoids squid.
Yes.
Because essentially it sounds like 炒魷魚.
Right.
It means you're getting fired.
Yeah.
Now you know the significance of everything on the table and you can guarantee yourself the happiest of Chinese New Year's. 恭喜發財，新年快樂.
恭喜發財.
Okay, Lee, we can't let this go to waste.
No squid, no squash. Remember that. Still ahead, should developers hire their own building inspectors? Premier Ford weighed in on our report today.
Here in Brampton, women experiencing homelessness say they feel forgotten.
I feel I'm lost out here and that sometimes I'm just brushed under the carpet.
I'm Talia Ricci, and coming up, we look into why there are no dedicated women's shelters in Brampton and what the region is doing to close that gap in services.
What defines a city? It's the people. Torontonians are diverse, friendly, fanatical, and adventurous. We are the mirror to this amazing, shining city on the lake. Our Toronto is your Toronto. What defines a city? It's the people. Torontonians are diverse, friendly, fanatical, and adventurous. We are the mirror to this amazing, shining city on the lake. Our Toronto is your Toronto.
As Brampton's population continues to grow, frontline workers are sounding the alarm about an urgent need for a women's shelter. Talia Ricci spoke to a few women who know firsthand why it is so important.
A lot of times we dress like men to keep ourselves safe.
But they aren't men, so they can't sleep at the men's shelter. And they aren't youth, so this shelter isn't for them either. In Brampton, these are the options for women experiencing homelessness.
A woman who is on the streets, has nowhere to sleep at night, is not fleeing domestic violence, does not have children, it's either stay on the street or take an hour-and-a-half bus route to Mississauga.
Approximately 4,000 people experienced homelessness in Peel in 2018, according to the region. And around 30% of the people accessing their shelters are women. Peel's Housing Services says there are no single female-only shelter spaces in the region for women who are not fleeing domestic violence.
There's times where I don't even sleep all night.
Right, and no
I don't sleep at all.
Kimberly, Carrie, and Maria say many nights are sleepless and scary. They've had knives pulled on them, things stolen. They say a shelter for women like them would make a difference.
They need to have a place to sleep where they're safe, where they can get their head back together and go back to work and be able to go and get their own place again.
The City of Brampton says staff are preparing a report this spring that proposes additional shelter beds for women in Brampton. One city councillor says that as this city experiences a time of growth, the need for a women's shelter is urgent.
Certainly we dropped the ball and now we're trying to address it in a meaningful manner. Council will be voting on it, understanding there's unanimous support for it, so we look forward to hopefully by the end of the spring to have a shelter ready to open.
But for now, it's a long wait for those living it and feeling forgotten.
I feel I'm lost out here and that sometimes I'm just brushed under the carpet. And it makes me feel that I just want to scream at someone and say, look at me, I'm worth it.
Talia Ricci, CBC News, Brampton.
Doug Ford weighed in today on a story CBC Toronto broke earlier this week. The Premier stated his reasons on why he agrees with the proposal to allow developers to hire their own building inspectors. John Lancaster explains.
Well, the reason we're doing that, there's such a backlog in all the cities.
Premier Ford says he's okay with giving developers the freedom to hire their own building inspectors to approve their work. Today, he explained why.
There's not enough supply and there's an over demand. The prices have gone up. We need to, make sure that we give the opportunity for the developers to get permits and start building homes, affordable homes.
But earlier this week, CBC News reported the plan might actually increase costs for homes because inspection costs currently covered by municipalities would instead be picked up by developers.
While a developer may pay to hire a certified professional, that fee, that payment is ultimately going to be flowed through to either the homeowner or the business owner who's going to occupy that space.
Will Johnston, Toronto's chief building official, worries private inspectors getting paid by developers may also cause potential conflicts of interest.
So independence is important to Toronto building is because when you have an independent process where you have independent oversight of the building regulatory process, what the public can have is trust and confidence in that the buildings that they live in, they work in, that they visit are safe.
The Ontario Home Builders Association says it hopes the province goes ahead with the plan, saying it would help speed up building times.
The city maintains 90% of inspections are done within 48 hours of receiving a request from a developer. As for the provincial proposal, officials maintain no final decisions have been made yet. John Lancaster, CBC News, Toronto.
They are finally all here. The last of the new streetcars have been delivered to Toronto. The last of the 204 Bombardier rail streetcars have arrived at TTC's Hillcrest complex. The low-floor cars will now spend 10 days in testing before being put on our roads and used in everyday service. This comes the same week that the TTC released a $4.6 billion wish list, including purchasing 60 additional streetcars. MPs return to work in Ottawa next week, and the Trudeau Liberals will be trying to implement their agenda as a minority government. That means they'll have to look for a lot more cooperation from the other parties, especially the Conservatives. Both the Liberals and the Tories held caucus meetings today to make final preparations for next week, and our senior parliamentary reporter, Julie Van Duzen, has been keeping an eye on things for us. So, Julie, what are the key items for the Liberals in this session of Parliament?
Yeah, I noticed, Dwight, you said trying to implement their agenda, and that's key because if folks don't remember, this is a minority parliament. The Liberals are short 13 seats. They have to play nice, and they need other people to help them out. So first on the agenda is NAFTA. The government wants to get this done. You need 3 countries to do it. U.S. President Donald Trump will be signing it on Wednesday at the White House. Mexico's already done this. Now it's only up to Canada. So expect a bill midweek. It'll probably go to committee. Opposition might push back a little. We'll see how much. So that's a key priority. And assisted dying is also this legislation that came out a few years ago. A court determined it was a little too restrictive on medically assisted dying. There will be changes there at some point in the coming weeks. And the government also said this week that cracking down on gun violence, of course, we've heard so much about it across the country, including in your city, starting with tightening up like putting a ban on military-style assault weapons. Now, that is going to be problematic, certainly with one party. The outgoing leader of the Conservatives, Andrew Scheer, said there will be pushback. Take a listen.
It's easy, lazy government to force people who are already following all the rules and all the laws to just follow a few more.
Well, Julie, with Scheer departing as leader of the Conservatives, are they going to have a split focus as they look to replace him? How's that shaping up?
Well, you know, they are the official opposition. They want to put the government's feet to the fire, and of course they say they will do that. But behind the scenes, there's a big scramble going on to replace Andrew Scheer, with names popping out, names popping in. Certainly we know that Peter MacKay, who launched a very kind of low-tech little video today announcing that he will jump in tomorrow in Nova Scotia in his old riding. We do know that's going to happen, but who knows, right? But that's supposed to happen tomorrow. So he's a relatively big name, but there's a big hole. There's no candidate in Quebec. There's no candidate out west, and that certainly had one MP, Michelle Rempel-Garner, saying there should be someone, especially from Alberta. Take a listen.
The fact that we don't have a viable or significant Western candidate in the race right now is of concern to me. There's a lot of people in my province and in Western Canada writ large that feel very alienated.
So, I mean, there will be a lot to watch, certainly, with this race. There's a few more weeks before candidates can declare they're in or they're out. And, of course, with this government trying to navigate its way through the minority parliament.
Our senior parliamentary reporter reporting from Ottawa tonight. Happy Friday. Thank you, Julie.
Okay, you too, Dwight.
Donald Trump addressed an important segment of his base today. The U.S. president spoke to thousands of anti-abortion protesters at the annual March for Life in Washington. As Katie Simpson explains, the anti-abortion movement and other conservative groups are key to Trump's re-election strategy.
The March for Life is the largest anti-abortion protest of its kind anywhere in the world. Though this year's gathering could easily be mistaken for one of President Donald Trump's rallies.
It's wonderful that we have the support of the President of the United States.
Trump is now the first ever sitting president to address the crowd in person. A move aimed at motivating his deeply conservative base at a time when he is under intense scrutiny at his impeachment trial.
Today, as President of the United States, I am truly proud to stand with you.
Donald Trump has actually been the most pro-life president that we've had. He has protected life more than any other president has.
I'll be voting for him this year, that's for sure.
Do you vote based on this issue?
completely on this issue.
Trump's appointment of 2 Supreme Court justices is the biggest win for this crowd, as they hope the new additions will vote along conservative lines. That will be tested in March when an abortion case comes before the court.
The Supreme Court, more than it's ever been, has become more and more conservative in an activist way.
Pro-choice advocates worry a Trump re-election would mean even more conservative justices. It's a motivating factor for both sides in the upcoming election. Katie Simpson, CBC News, Washington.
Still ahead, brewing beer with a recipe that's nearly 200 years old. First, though, we take a look at your forecast. Rain is coming. Nick's back after the break to tell us when and how much to expect. Stay with us. We will be right back. So, Nick, there's this little guy, his last name is Cernkovich, and he really wants to go skiing.
Yeah.
And he thought his daddy could help him, but it's not working out with all this rain, buddy.
It is not working out. We've signed him up for ski lessons at Centennial Park. 2 weeks in a row, though, it's been canceled because it's just been too warm. And I thought with the snow we had last week, for sure we were going to get to go skiing. And now this. Rainfall on January 24th. Actually, quite a bit of rain. We've got rainfall warnings in effect right now. Local flooding is possible with this. Listen, every time we have this, we tend to have flooding in certain areas like underpasses. If you're out there driving tonight and it doesn't look right, take another route. There's a good chance with the snow melt as well, we're going to see some local flooding. It'll switch over to some wet snow for tomorrow. So let's talk about what's going on right now. Rainfall across the lake. You've got freezing rain, though, to the north and some of the higher elevations, switching over to snowfall. So there are warnings, as I mentioned off the top, freezing rain warnings in pink, rainfall warnings here in the areas in green. Environment Canada is saying up to 35 millimeters of rain. I think some areas could actually see more than that. The bulk of this rain actually coming right around the GTA. It's pushing up from the south, tapping into moisture from the Gulf of Mexico. We've got special weather statements elsewhere here for a mix of rain, freezing rain, and also snowfall. Closer to about 10-15 centimeters of snow after the freezing rain to the east, also to the north as well of the GTA. But for the City of Toronto, largely staying as rain and largely coming tonight. We're sort of in the bullseye for this thing. It'll carry on till tomorrow morning, then could get a quick shot of sort of heavy wet snow before it switches over to sort of a rain-snow mix tomorrow, and then tomorrow evening some wet snow in the forecast. And that's where we could see a little bit in the way of accumulations across the City of Toronto. But I think we're going to stay just above that zero mark. So if we do see accumulations, it's going to be sort of that heavy wet snowfall, about 2 to 4 centimeters are possible. In fact, let's talk about accumulations right now. The heaviest falling around the Toronto area out toward Peterborough. This is going to be mixed with some freezing precipitation. I wouldn't take these numbers at face value, but it gives you an idea of what we're looking at in terms of accumulations. City of Toronto, about 2 to 4 centimeters of snow, but you see more toward the north as we head through tomorrow morning. Or rather Sunday morning. Here's a look at current temperatures right now. They will stay above the zero mark for tonight. Temperatures hovering around 1 degree with heavier rainfall, especially through the overnight period. As we move through tomorrow, they stay pretty much steady at about 1 degree. And then tomorrow night, that's where we could see something in the way of accumulations. They're tapering to flurries on Sunday. Some more sunshine as we head to next week to kick off the work week. But like I said, Dwight, we always see this local flooding. So really, if it doesn't look right, take another route.
Yeah, absolutely correct. Thank you for that, Nick.
You bet.
After the break, our Friday movie review. It's an action-packed gangster story on the mean streets of London. Our fine gentleman, Eli Glasner, gives us his take of The Gentleman next.
There's only one rule in this jungle. When the lion's hungry, he eats.
Guy Ritchie is back with The Gentleman, an action-packed gangster story on the mean streets of London. It is hitting theaters this weekend, and it is also packed with stars. Eli is here with his take. Ritchie has made a lot of different kind of films lately. Yeah. What version of Ritchie are we getting in this one?
Yeah, I mean, let's remind ourselves, he directed Aladdin, right? But before he was the director of Aladdin, he was the director of one of my favorite films ever. I'm talking about Snatch. And look, this is the guy who has gone back to doing, I think, what he does best, right? Like, you wouldn't order lobster from a pizza place. You wouldn't get your dentist to fix your toilet. Nope. This is Richie in his happy place, in the pocket. And what does he do? Exactly what you're seeing. A bunch of nonsense, a bunch of blokes, some thugs, some guns, criminal chaos. This is exactly what is on offer with the gentleman. Now, what's interesting, what's new here is some of the star power. This is a tale set in Britain, but the center of it all is, yes, Matthew McConaughey himself. All right, playing Mickey Pearson, who is the proprietor of the biggest illegal marijuana biz in the country. And if anyone's going to sell us on going green, it's this guy. Let's take a look.
Weed, bush, skunkamola, White Widow super cheese. It's the new gold rush. This is the thin end of a very fat wedge, sir.
If it's such a fat wedge, why don't you keep it?
I just want to repeat, White Widow super cheese. Now, I'm not an expert. I'll leave that to others. But if anyone can sell that choice bit of dialogue, it is Mr. McConaughey, which just rolls off the tongue so trippingly. So there you saw there's another guy in the scene. It's actually Jeremy Strong. You might have seen him in the series Succession. He's the competition. He's the guy who's actually considering buying out Mickey, taking over the entire operation. Now, it's so profitable. Why would he want to get out? Well, like any good criminal, he's got a taste of the good life. He's looking to become part of the upper crust, and so if he can just package this deal, he might be able to move up in the world.
I saw some red bottoms there. That's moving up. Okay, so you are a Guy Ritchie fan.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
What do you make of this latest offering, then?
You know, what I love is a director who is just indulging himself, who is having fun, and you see that fun is infectious. And you look at the cast that he's working with. We got Charlie Hunnam, who plays Ray, the right-hand man to Mickey. If you need something done, you just ask Ray, and then you don't ask any other questions. But he crosses paths with Hugh Grant. Hugh Grant is at his best when he's playing people at their worst, and he plays the muddiest of muckraking reporters, a guy named Fletcher, who breaks into Ray's house, pops the cork of the champagne, and then starts telling a tale. Let's take a look.
I want you to play a game with me, Ray.
I don't want to play a game.
Oh, please?
No.
I said play a game with me, Raymond.
Right.
Lovely. Could you imagine a character? Your boss, Mickey Pearson.
You're too smart to be blackmailing us, Fletcher.
So there you go, and Fletcher is actually kind of the narrator. He's the one telling the tale. But also you might notice there, yeah, that is Henry Golding, the star of Crazy Rich Asians. He plays a Chinese gangster trying to muscle in on Mickey's territory. Now, very happy to see that Henry is able to expand and isn't just playing romantic leads. Not so happy that Guy Ritchie, every time the Chinese gangster comes on screen, feels the need to add some racist jokes that you think the guy who worked on Aladdin with Disney would know better, exactly. But I saved the best for last. You see him there, Colin Farrell playing a local boxing trainer simply named Coach. And yes, his crew have matching plaid leather suits. So
who isn't in this movie, Eli?
You know, it's quite the cast, and you get Colin in the beautiful track suits and McConaughey and whatnot. So all in all, worked for me. 3.5 stars out of 5.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
What was that again? White?
We're trying to make it authentic. And that's a little bit difficult.
Coming up next, what it takes to brew an 1830s beer and why you probably aren't buying a 2-4 of it. That's coming up.
9.5%, and after a couple of those, it's nap time.
So you might have a cold brew, but how about an old brew? A company in East York has concocted a brand new beer based on a very old recipe. How old? The 1830s, to be exact. Take a look.
You can definitely tell it's 9.5% alcohol.
Yes.
There is a certain amount of booziness.
Yes.
I'm Jordan St. John, and I'm the author of Lost Breweries of Toronto. Today we're here at Muddy York Brewing to talk about one of Toronto's oldest historical breweries and a recipe that we created based on the brewer's diary. The thing that's unique about the Hellawell Old Ale is that it's based on William Hellawell's diaries. He would have been the brewer at Todmorden Mill, which is at the bottom of Pottery Road. And in the 1820s and 30s, it was a very prominent brewery within the city of Toronto. The thing that's left behind is William Hellawell's diary. And he records details of his daily life in it. Mostly he's talking about being in love with the girl next door. He talks about delivering beer to people, like the Bishop of Toronto. Bishop was ordering like a barrel of beer a week. This is a useful historical detail. The fact that you're able to piece together, based on the maps of the property and based on the detail of the diary, what the beer might have been like, that's kind of fascinating. And because you have a sense of the brewer, you can maybe intuit choices that he would have made.
Typical brew of maybe 5%, we might use 200 to 225 kilos of grain. In the Hellawell Old Ale, we used up to 350 kilos. So it really put some stress on our process and our mash tun. And as Jordan was mentioning, when we were mixing up the mash, we have actual wooden paddles, and it was so thick that we ended up breaking a paddle, and I fell off my ladder and made a big bang. But it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of work, but it was a lot of fun to make it. That was exactly that. We used an actual canoe paddle.
There was a little bit of roughness around the edges, I think because of the authenticity we were striving for with the malt bill. So putting it in a barrel for a couple of years is going to round the edges off of that malt character. Any astringency, any sort of tannic character that you might get on the palate, wiped out by that sweetness, by that oak.
So we left it and aged it and aged it. And the thing about barrel aging, you have to be patient. It's like wine, whiskey. You just got to be patient and wait till it's ready. And we felt at the 2-year mark it was ready, and we pulled it out. And we're very excited to be able to enjoy that now.
I think the impressive thing is there's still a little bit of bitterness in the back end of it. It's not completely malt dominant, and it's got some balance, which is nice.
Yes.
So a person who doesn't know anything about beer, I look at that and it's dark. I'm like, okay, well, it's a Guinness or it's a stout.
But it is really, I mean, when people came to Toronto from the old world, they brought their brewing culture with them. And in this case, you're talking about people from Yorkshire. So they're bringing old ale from the north of England. It's really different than stout. It's the kind of thing that you'd grow on an estate brewery, which is what the Hellawell Brewery was. It's just transported to Toronto.
Yeah, might have to try that.
Yeah. Maybe a good night to stay in, right?
Yeah, with all the rain out there. So what should we plan for as we go through this weekend?
You know what? I think the biggest thing here is tonight, the chance for some local flooding, right?
Yes.
Because we're not just talking about the rain. I mean, this is rain on a big scale, even for summer weather, right? But now we're in the winter.
And the melting snow.
And the melting snow as well, right? So we're looking at about 35, 40 millimeters of rain, maybe even more in some areas. Most of it coming tonight. There are warnings in effect for the city of Toronto and surrounding areas. Then tomorrow it sort of tapers off a little bit. Wet flurries and snow. We could see some wet snow showers for tomorrow evening. So a big mess.
Yes.
And all that snow, if you were looking forward to going tobogganing, like we took my little guy out tobogganing, it'll probably all be gone by tomorrow. So.
Thank you, Nick.
Yeah.
That's our show for tonight. Thank you for joining us. No late show tonight because of hockey. We'll see you back here Monday at 6. Have a great weekend, everybody. Enjoy the skills competition tonight.